Today we're going to be making lemonade dice, or really that's just an excuse to try out this idea I had to put ice inside of dice, or fake ice. I saw an insider video where they made quiet ice using clear silicone, and I thought maybe I could try and do that inside of dice and make it look like ice. Rybomom sent me these cute little foam fruits, and one looks like a lemon, so let's make some lemonade with these lemons. Who has 2 thumbs up and has his PPE on? This guy, because it's time to work with resin pretty much immediately. We're going to be using cap molds for these dice because we're going to put things on top of them and it will be 1,000 times easier than if we were using sprue molds. You could still do it with sprue molds, but I highly recommend you use cap molds if you have them. We're essentially going to be doing a colored layer pour using resin, and so I'm going to use Envirotex light resin. It cures relatively quickly, so I don't have to wait forever on this project to be completed, and it's a 1:1 by volume mixture. I'm going to mix it up until there are no more streaks in my resin, and I'm just filled with a ton of bubbles in my cup. There's actually some benefits to that. If you want to have like a sparkling lemonade look, you could definitely keep some bubbles in there, but I want mine to be clear and look like there's nothing in the mold at all. So we can fix that with a pressure pot in a minute, but I'm going to fill up my molds about 1/4 of the way with resin. So that's a different amount depending on which mold. For example, the D4 just takes a few drops, where the D20 takes a whole swig of this resin stuff, and then you can just leave it setting out if you do want some bubbles, though that may cause some balance issues. You can always pop some surface bubbles with the lighter, but again, I'm going to use a pressure pot because I want mine to be completely transparent, as if there is nothing there on one part of the dice at all. I leave them in the pressure pot at around 40 psi for 24 hours. That's enough for it to be really hard and really solidified to where we have a nice flat surface to put both our lemons and some ice on top of. I left out a bit of resin in the cup, not in the pressure pot, so you can see there are some bubbles in it, but there's too many floating around and not at the surface for my liking. But we can also use this so I can show you what I'm going to do on each of the dice a little bit more clearly. So I'm going to pour out some of these little foam pieces of fruit. They're nice little slices, and there's lots of lemons in there, though it is hard to kind of pick them out, so I recommend having some tweezers if you do find this product. I thought about making strawberry lemonade because that's my favorite if I can't have blueberry lemonade, but I'm just going to stick to regular lemonade this time. I'm going to use super glue to put some of this foam fruit stuff down onto the resin, a tiny drop, essentially non-existent. We want it just to hold this piece onto the resin. The actual resin itself that we're going to pour on top will keep this thing held in place, so we don't actually need all that much super glue, just enough to hold it down, which leads us over to the silicone. I'm going to cut out a bit with my X-Acto knife. We don't need a whole lot. I actually found out that I could salvage this old mold that I made with really clear silicone on and still use it. So I'm just going to cut off little pieces until I get something that looks somewhat like a square or a piece of ice. I probably could have gone larger with these, but I was really testing this technique to see if it worked at all, because Christmas is coming up and I thought it'd be really cool to have an entire ice set of dice, and this was my test for that. The purpose of putting the glue on the silicone and the foam pieces is just to make sure that they don't float up when we put resin on top of them. Both of these have a tendency to do that, and so we need something to hold it down. So now we can do it onto the dice mold, since we have a bunch of lemons and a bunch of pieces of quote-unquote ice ready to go. Now you might be saying glue doesn't stick to silicone, and you are totally right. I let the glue dry long enough just to get somewhat of a hold on the silicone. All it has to do is overcome its natural buoyancy and desire to float up on top of the resin that we're going to put in, and that's all I need it to do. Once the resin completely solidifies, there's nothing moving out of place, and so I think we're going to be good to go. I've tried other glues and they just don't seem to hold it long enough or well enough, so I am going to use super glue, even though that can leave a bit of a white film on the resin, so it's best not to leave this too long. And you can see the silicone sticks enough to the glue. Not very well. I'm going to zoom in so you can see if I push on it even a little bit hard, it does come up off of the glue, so you can't be too rough with this stuff, but it's held in place, and so I think we can move on to the next step and mix up another batch of resin. We're going to need a lot more resin this time around because we're filling up 3/4 of the mold instead of just 1/4 of it, and it's always good to have excess for cap molds. After I mix this stuff up, lemonade looks yellow, so I got me some Bob Ross cadmium yellow alcohol ink, and we're also going to put a little bit of the DIY liquid glitter gold that we made in a previous video. I think it'll make it look like there's a little bit of sugar inside of the resin that just hasn't dissolved yet. And I like sugar in my lemonade, so that's what we're going to go with. Also, gold. That's not a bad thing. I'm going to add just 2 drops of yellow. Anything more than that and it will look too dark. Lemonade's typically a very, very light yellow. I even pop some of the surface bubbles on this stuff before I pour it into the molds, and it's never a bad idea to have wax paper down because this stuff is always messy whenever we do cap molds. You can see this is a very, very light yellow as we pour it over the top of our lemons and silicone fake ice, but none of them are moving up to the surface, at least immediately, so I'm pretty hopeful before I close these molds off. I made just the right amount of resin to pour over each of the bottom half of the molds and to have a little bit left over to pour onto the caps. I go over with a lighter to pop any surface bubbles to make sure we're not going to have any gaps or voids in our molds, you know, the typical stuff, and I shimmy on the lids onto their keys and registration marks. That way they lock into place inside of the silicone molds. After another trip into the pressure pot, bada bing, bada boom, look at those dice. They are so lemony and so good looking. You can see the silicone really does make ice shapes inside of there. The only downside to these is, and I didn't think that I could do this, I could have put a lot more silicone or a lot bigger silicone in there and it would have looked even better. I was worried about balance throwing it off, so I would say this is the balanced version of some lemonade dice, but if you want it to look even more icy and more realistic, you could definitely put more silicone in there. But after taking these out of the molds, they do need some sanding. Some of them have some rough edges, especially the D20. I'm going to have to start making some new molds soon, and so I'm going to place out a flat plane of glass to do my sanding on and cut out a little square of Zona papers. It's just really, really high grit sanding paper as far as you should be concerned, and we're going to get a glass-like shine out of it. I go through all grits except for the green one. That's just too rough. I don't really need it until I have a glass-like shine on all of these. Ooh, okay, whoops, drop that one. A glass-like shine on all of these dice. Now I need to ink them or color in the numbers, and you've always suggested Vallejo colors in the comments, so I got me some. I got some sun yellow and dead white. I ended up doing a 1 part yellow to 2 parts white to get it light enough to look like lemonade. That sun yellow is just almost orange more than it is yellow. Looks good, but wasn't what I was going for, and I really, really like how this light yellow turned out on these dice. I'm doing my typical inking style where I just flood it with paint and then wipe away the excess with my finger. Don't worry if there's even more excess, we can wipe it away with alcohol later, but that color combo looks perfect for the lemony lemonade. And honestly, this skill of putting all of this fake ice inside of dice is a skill that I'm glad that I can share with all of you. Thank you so much for auditioning last time. You were amazing, and it's so great to have you as the new Skillshare person. Why don't you go ahead and read the script and just say the line? No! Skillshare man! Stop right there. But I'm the one and only Skillshare guy. Nobody else can do what I do. We already have somebody who's amazing. They auditioned so well. No, they're nothing. They're not like me. They can't say, did somebody say Skillshare like I can? I care about this job. You were fired for being late. You look horrible. So do you. If I look bad, you look bad. What does that mean? Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and if you haven't heard of them, they're an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creators like you and I to explore their new skills, deepen their passions, or get lost in creativity. I really like it because it's made for learning, so there's not going to be any ads, and I can just stay focused and follow my creativity, and you can with yours. They're always launching a ton of new classes. I go there for new resin ideas all the time, or woodworking things because I find them relaxing, or even voiceover things, even though, you know, I should teach the class on voiceover transitions. And I like to use them to find or fuel some of my other ideas. Like there's this awesome class by Letha Matz called Concrete Polygons, and what does that look like if not a D20? Concrete dice sounds pretty cool to me, but let's help each other out, because the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare so that you can start exploring your creativity today. And while you're signing up for your membership, why don't I go ahead and finish off these dice? They look really good, but they could use a little scrubbing with a paper towel and some alcohol to look really, really crystal clear, and man, do they. These are some really, really awesome lemonade dice. I was not expecting to like them as much as I do. That ice technique really, really works. If I could find some other glue that would hold the silicone down without leaving any sort of white residue like super glue does, I would love to use it. I tried E6000 glue, which I know stays clear inside of resin, but it doesn't hold the silicone enough down when I pour the resin on top of it, and the silicone just floats up to the surface, which is not good, so I have to use super glue for now. now, but if you have an idea, let me know in the comments down below, because that could make this even better. The only other thing I would have done to change these if I could was maybe pour the yellow lemonade part of the resin first. You can see here on the D6, whenever I'm rotating this around, the corners of the D6 actually have that white or clear resin creep up the sides. That's just due to surface tension, I guess. And if it was with the yellow part, that would look more realistic, but having the yellow part be kind of curved downwards is contrary to how gravity and liquids work and surface tension, so it does look a bit off. I'm probably the only one who would notice it on my own dice, so it's not really anything I need to fix, but if I can fix it, why not try that? But we of course have to see how these dice sound, and it's lemonade. It's got to go in a glass. By the way, go check out Rocky's Hot Chicken if you're ever in Asheville, North Carolina. Good stuff. I was stoked for the nat 20 because yay, good dice, but what I was really psyched for
yeah,
was 2 nat 20s in a row, baby. That might be the first double nat 20 on the channel. Now those are some dice that look as good as they sound, and it's hard not to eat them because they do just, look like lemonade, but, don't eat dice because they are made out of resin and that will kill you. So don't do that, but you can still admire and make your own resin dice like this with some ice inside of them. This is a cool technique. I'm glad I tried it out and I'm glad that it works so well. So we're definitely going to do some ice stuff for Christmas, maybe some Jack Frost themed, or if there's a D&D monster you think should be ice themed for some dice, let me know that in the comments down below. But thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing if you might want to see some more videos like this in the future. Like the video if you like it, dislike it if you disliked it. I want to hear that too. Make sure you tune in for next week's video. It's going to be a doozy for people who are interested in dice making. Thank you again so much for watching. I hope that you all have a fantastic day.